And Bernie, welcome to the program.
Good to be with you, Tom.
Great to have you.
Happy New Year to all of our listeners.
Yes, thank you, and to you and your staff too as well. The new unemployment numbers came out, and it looks like, at least in the private sector, even though the Republicans have been laying off government workers in red states for months, 500,000 now altogether since Obama came into office, that we've been making good progress, or some progress, in creating jobs.
The answer is yes, and that is extremely good news. Creating 200,000 jobs last month is nothing to sneeze at. But when the media reports that unemployment is 8.5%, what we should all understand that really underestimates what real unemployment is in this country, because those numbers do not include people who have given up looking for work and people who are working part-time who want to work full-time. So the real unemployment is far, far higher than that. So the answer is yes, this is very good news, but anybody who thinks that Congress should not be extremely aggressive in going forward and trying to create the many millions of jobs this country needs. Some 24 million people are unemployed or underemployed, and we have got to be very aggressive in making sure those people have jobs. So good news, yes, but we've got a long way to go. 24
million people, that's amazing. And I understand that the Postal Service might be adding to that number.
Right. One of the issues that my office is now dealing with and spending a lot of time on is the plan of the Postal Service to cut back and eliminate some 250 processing plants, many thousands of rural post offices, slow down mail delivery very significantly, and Saturday mail service, and in the process cut about 100,000 jobs. And obviously, in the middle of a recession, cutting 100,000 jobs is not what we need. But equally important, it seems to me it is absolutely imperative that this country have a strong post office. And while the post office does have objective problems in that first-class mail is going down, being replaced by email, there is no debate, I think, in Washington that the post office has been burdened with very onerous payments that they have to make in terms of future retiree health benefits to the tune of $5.5 billion every single year, far, far more than needs to be made. Also, they've overpaid into another federal retirement plan. And if we deal with those issues, as well as develop a new business model for the post office, making them adjust to the digital age, 21st century, get them much more entrepreneurial, much more competitive, I think we short-term can come up with the funds to prevent these layoffs, long-term create a business model which makes the post office, enables the post office to bring in a lot more revenue than they currently are.
Yeah. So, and what else are you seeing with your colleagues in the Senate? And and this whole thing about the Senate is in session, but it's not. To this morning, I believe it was, or maybe it was yesterday, the in the House, the Speaker pro tem gavelled the House into order. James Clyburn stood up and said, "I'd like to, since we're in order, we're in session right now. Let's talk about, jobs." I believe he wanted to bring it up, and the person said, "You're out of order. We're not conducting business," and gavelled it back
These
out.
are all pro forma. I mean, nothing new about that. But I think here's where we're at as a nation. I don't think, while we have some, reasonably good news in terms of employment numbers this month, I don't have to spend a great deal of time discussing with our listeners the enormously serious problems facing our economy, facing our healthcare system, facing us in terms of global warming and environmental issues. And my hope is that when we return, the Democrats will be extremely aggressive in addressing some of these issues. So the good news is employment is up a little bit. That's good. But there is no question in my mind that we're going to have to invest heavily in rebuilding our infrastructure, and that's roads, bridges, rail, water, wastewater, broadband, cell phone service, to create, not only to make our country stronger, more efficient, more productive, but also to create a very significant number of jobs. So I think rebuilding our infrastructure is something that we absolutely have got to do for a number of reasons, not to mention that in the middle of a recession we need to create the millions of jobs that would enable us to do. Second of all, we are spending $350 billion a year on foreign oil, contributing to greenhouse gas emissions, global warming. Now is the moment to reverse reverse what we do in terms of energy, transform our energy system, move to energy efficiency. And when you do that, when you save fuel bills and cut back on fuel consumption in homes and buildings, not only do you also cut back on greenhouse gas emissions, but you create a whole lot of jobs in weatherizing homes and buildings, and in the products that those buildings need, whether it's insulation, new doors, new windows, whatever it may be. So I see great potential in job creation and in terms of helping us deal with global warming by moving very aggressively and transforming our energy system. And the last point I want to make, one that you and I talk about all of the time, but one that I want to continue to focus on because it's enormously important. That is our trade policies. That is the fact that it is harder and harder to buy products made in the United States of America. Now, by the way, last week, Tom, you may or may not remember that one of our callers was a woman veteran who had been at a VA hospital, noticed that in the gift shop there, many of the products being sold there were not made in America. We've investigated that, and that's an issue we're looking at right now. She was right, by the way. This is true all over the United States of America. So we're going to be working with the Veterans Administration to have them do a better job buying products made in the United States. We're making some progress with the Smithsonian Institute, with the company that provides the gifts at various monuments around the country, national parks. So moving toward rebuilding our manufacturing sector at living wage jobs is also very, very important. Some of the readers may have, some of our listeners may have noticed that there was a very interesting piece in the New York Times last week, and it pointed out that companies like General Electric are, in fact, beginning to increase manufacturing jobs in America. In some cases, they're taking jobs back from China. That's the good news. The bad news is that they're doing that at wages that are 20, 30, 40% lower than they used to be. And in fact, the dream of corporate America to make our wages competitive with China is to some degree taking place. Some of the GE spokesmen were saying, well, we can do this. We can bring jobs back to America at 30, 40% lower than they used to be because it's becoming competitive. It's easier to do business in America than it is in China.
Yeah, it's like in Germany, the average auto worker makes $67 an hour, and GM's hiring people in at $14 an hour.
Exactly.
It's this is crazy. 15 minutes past the hour. Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour, our national town hall meeting where you can speak with the man I think of as America's senator, although the people of Vermont are very proud to call him their senator, Senator Bernie Sanders. His website, sanders.senate.gov. We'll be right back with more from Bernie Sanders.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Actually, we'll be back with your calls for Senator Bernie Sanders. This is a town hall meeting. We'll be back. Your call's up next. Stick around. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you and Senator Bernie Sanders. Kathy in Etna, Wyoming. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, gentlemen. Thank you for taking my call. Senator Sanders, I have a question that's really affecting people now that need to renew their driver's license, and it's we have to provide more factual information such as birth certificate, give them our Social Security number, 2 proofs of residency, et cetera, et cetera. And my question is the Real ID Act, which has caused this new force of giving them private and personal information, is the Real ID Act of 2005 an actual law that was passed by Congress?
Kathy, I don't have that information in front of me. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. But when you spoke, what I thought you were going to be talking to, and let me say a word on that, is that many states now are requiring voters to come up with these photo IDs and information that was not previously the case. In that instance, what I believe that is an effort toward voter suppression and making sure that elderly people and lower-income people make it more difficult for them to vote. But, Kathy, in terms of your question, I don't know the answer to that, and I'm sorry.
And ironically enough, in Iowa during the Republican primary, they didn't require photo ID for the Republicans to vote. Jim in Somerdale, Ohio, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah, how you guys doing today?
Good.
Thanks for watching Free Speech
Bernie,
TV.
I watched you on Colbert. Good showing. The unemployment rates, I knew it was false. I've been in retail my whole life, and typically be with the seasonal hiring for the holidays and all the returns that goes in, the economy always flattens out right after the holidays. So, because it's the returns and stuff that's giving you false unemployment rates and shit, all these people are going to be back unemployed in February until the next holiday comes in March, in April with Easter. So the economy will pick back. So I guess those are misleading, and I'm glad that we do it. But
okay.
No other questions.
Well, the point that I was making, Jim, is that what everybody agrees is that when you see numbers, whether it's 9% or currently 8.5%, those numbers do not take into consideration people who have given up looking for work, people who are in high unemployment areas where there are no jobs, they've just given up looking. They're not part of that statistic, and they should be. And people who are working part-time when they want to work full-time. When you add those together, the 8.5% becomes closer to 14 or 15%.
Yeah, and okay. I think we have time to get another call in here. Leslie in Tecumseh, Michigan, watching us on Free Speech TV. You're on the air with Senator Sanders. We have about a minute and a half.
Okay, I'll try to go quickly. Senator Sanders, a trend that I'm finding, I read this article the other day and find it fairly alarming, is that energy companies from China and France, one called Total SA, the other one Cineco, are investing now in gas drilling and oil exploration in our country. And besides the Keystone XL, I'm afraid that because of the unemployment issue, people are, cramming for jobs and scrambling for jobs, and so the drill baby drill and the frack baby frack, because it's going to create jobs, is what's going to be the mantra. And how do we balance that with the devastation to our environment?
Leslie, we'll have to have Bernie comment on that on the other side of the break. Hang on just a minute. We'll get right back to that. Thank you very much. We'll be right back.
Lost working time is lost money. Every day that a workman is unemployed, or a machine is unused, or a business organization is marking time, it is a loss to the nation. I'm a little bit harder and a whole lot smarter. That's how I got to play this way.
Welcome back to the program where we dare to ask, is Walmart a person? And we dare to say, no, I don't think so. Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie, our National Town Hall meeting. And Bernie, a caller a minute ago had a question. You want to re-paraphrase the question and give us your thoughts on it?
Pointed out that China and other countries are investing in the United States of America now in terms of oil and gas exploration. And she is concerned about that from an environmental and economic perspective, in the sense that with a bad economy, people may say, hey, we're not so worried about the environment. A job is a job. I think Leslie makes a good point. China has been extraordinarily aggressive in investing in energy all over the world. So it shouldn't surprise us that they're investing in the United States of America as well. Look, let me be very clear. I think that the future of energy in this country, and in fact the world, is not fossil fuels. I think global warming has already caused enormous problems for this country and for countries all over the world in terms of severe weather disturbances, in terms of drought, in terms of flooding, and everything being equal, it is only going to get worse. And I think the fate of the planet in years to come depends upon us getting a handle and reversing global warming. And one of the sad aspects of what's happening right now in America and throughout the world is we are not doing that. My view is that reversing global warming transforming our energy system is also good for the economy. I think we can create over a period of time millions of jobs by being aggressive in terms of energy efficiency and weatherization and moving toward wind, solar, geothermal, biomass. So my view is that we can deal with the economy, we can create decent paying jobs at the same time as we cut greenhouse gas emissions and transform our energy system. And that's kind of where I'm coming from as a member of the Energy Committee.
Buzz in Hamilton, Pennsylvania. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Mr. Sanders?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm a 100% disabled Marine Corps Vietnam veteran, and I'd like to know why I had to pay more taxes than the millionaires and billionaires.
More income taxes.
I'll tell you why. You're raising an issue which gets at the heart of what is being debated in Washington right now. The economic reality of this country is that our middle class is in sharp decline. Poverty is increasing, while the wealthiest people are doing phenomenally well. And while the wealthiest people are doing phenomenally well, what is also going on is that their effective tax rate, i.e., what they really pay in terms of a percentage of their income and taxes, has gone down precipitously in recent years. Rich get richer, their real tax rates go down. And if the federal government, and obviously our Republican friends have been pushing this very, very hard, it's part of their trickle-down economic theory, what's good for the rich people, what's good for large multinational corporations, some of which also pay nothing in taxes while they make billions in profit, that all of that is supposed to stimulate the economy and create zillions of jobs. So to answer your question, Buzz, when less revenue is coming into the federal government because of tax breaks for the wealthy and all kinds of loopholes for corporations, when we fight two wars without paying for it, when you do those things, our Republican friends then notice that the deficit is high and they want to cut, and they're cutting all across the board. They want to go even further: Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and that's what the debate in Washington is about right now. How do you grow the economy? Some of us don't believe it's giving tax breaks to billionaires. How do you deal with deficit reduction? Some of us think that the wealthiest people in this country and large corporations have got to begin paying their fair share, and that you don't simply cut programs that vulnerable Americans need.
Randy in Sioux City, Iowa. You're on the air with Bernie Sanders, Senator Sanders.
Good day, Senator Sanders.
Hi.
My question has to do with the post office, and I want to qualify my question briefly. Every time that UPS or FedEx comes to my door to deliver or pick up, it's a minimum of $4.95, maybe more. And every time that the United States Post Office comes to my door, it's about 49 cents. And they drive by every day to service me. Why can't we deregulate the United States Post Office so that they can afford to continue this service and employ Americans?
Well, Randy, that's a good question. I don't know if you were listening earlier in the show when I talked about the post office, because that's an issue we're working very hard on. Here's what is involved right now. The post office is having financial problems for a number of reasons, including, and very significantly, the fact they're being asked to pay $5.5 billion every single year for future health retirees. They're asked to come up with 75 years of payments in the next 10 years. It's a very onerous, unprecedented request for any government agency. No government agency is anywhere near it. The issue you are raising, though, is also very important. It is, how do you change the business model, how the post office function, to make them more entrepreneurial? Right now, because of federal law, which we are trying to change, Randy, we're trying to do what you are saying. In many ways, the post office's hands are tied. Christmas time or any time of the year, you want to mail wine or beer to the post office, you can't do that. If you are going to a rural post office and you want to get a letter notarized, maybe you want to buy a fishing license, a hunting license, you can't do that. There are many services which I believe the post office might be able to make money out of, which they can't do right now. in many communities in America, if you're a lower income person, you got a check. The only way you cash that check is through some same day lender at really onerous rates. Can the post office play a role in helping people cash checks? Probably. Make money doing that.
Great, a lot of great solutions. Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour here on the Thom Hartmann program. Check out his website at sanders.senate.gov. We'll be back with more of your calls and questions for Bernie Sanders.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann program. Call 866-987-THOM.
Our Brunch with Bernie hour, national town hall meeting here on the Thom Hartmann program. Sanders.senate.gov and, of course, ThomHartmann.com.
Please welcome Senator Bernie Sanders.
Yes, please welcome Senator Bernie Sanders. Our Brunch with Bernie hour here. Senator, you're still with us?
I'm right here.
Okay. Let's pick up some more phone calls here. Let's see. Janet in Bellingham, Washington, listening on KBAI. You are on the air with Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to speak with both of you. Senator Sanders, I have a question. It has to do with the Stop Online Piracy Act. I, like probably hundreds of thousands, if not more, Americans, I take a prescription drug that would be like extremely expensive if I had to order it here in this country, like $300 a month. I order it from a reputable pharmacy in Canada at a fraction of the cost. Mm-hmm. And my last prescription that I received, there was a letter in there that said that that we are in imminent danger of losing our ability to import these drugs, that apparently embedded in this Stop Online Piracy Act is something that would no longer allow us to import prescription drugs from reputable pharmacies in Canada. First of all, what is going on with this awful, Stop Online Piracy Act, which, it's one of those things that people hear about, but they don't really know about, and then all of a sudden it's going to be a part of our law, just like, Citizens United, all of
Got it. Let me ask you this. What you're doing now is purchasing prescription drugs from Canada at a fraction of the cost, I presume, than you would pay for that same drug in the United States. Is that correct?
Excuse me. I'm sorry, Bernie. Janet dropped off. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me tell Janet.
But yes, she said that it would have cost her $300 in the U.S. and it was less than that in Canada.
As the first member of the United States Congress ever to take American citizens across the Canadian border to buy low-cost prescription drugs, trust me, Janet, I will do everything I can to make sure that Americans continue to have that ability. Our prescription drug costs in this country are the highest in the world, and the same exact product in the same bottle, made by the same company, is sold in Canada and other countries in Europe for a fraction of the price. So clearly, for many, many Americans, in some cases, this is an issue of life and death, of being able to purchase affordable medicine abroad, in this case through the Internet. Trust me, Janet, that's something we will do everything we can to make sure continues.
Melody in Lamont, Florida. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello, Tom, Senator Sanders. Thanks for taking my call. Mm-hmm. Listening to the post office, I'm a rural patron. I have no idea how many customers are in my postal serviceman's route. But this is akin to carpooling or the efficiencies of mass transportation. If they cut off my carrier and I have to drive 15 miles to the post office every day or curtail how many times I go, and all of my neighbors, 40, 50, 100 of them have to do the same thing, think of the fuel inefficiency, just how much gasoline it will take us to get our mail when it takes a teaspoon to go from my mailbox to my next-door neighbors to my next-door neighbors. Drill, baby, drill isn't the answer. Hey, rural carriers are part of the answer.
Melody, thank you very much. That's I couldn't agree with you more, and you said it better than I could have said it. If you shut down thousands of rural post offices, as the post office wants to do, and by the way, we managed to get a 5-month moratorium on cutbacks while Congress comes up with what I hope is a sensible, comprehensive plan. But if you cut back on these rural post offices, not only is what Melody talking about likely to happen, in that people have to get in their cars, spend money on gas to pick up their mail 10, 20, 30 miles away, but you have older folks who don't have automobiles. What happens to them? And I would add to that in my state of Vermont, and in many states all over this country, rural post offices are more than just places where people pick up mail. They become the center of small towns. They're the place where people meet and chat, and they play a very important function in town life. What we want to do is give these rural post offices the opportunity to figure out ways that they can make more revenue. Some of them are losing money, and we want to give them the opportunity, the flexibility, to come up with ways to bring in more revenue. But shutting down thousands of rural post offices certainly does not make sense to me for a number of reasons, including the very, very important point that Melody has just made.
David in Farmington, Missouri. You're on the air with Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders, for being for the people. My name is Dave. I'm down here in rural Missouri with a super fun project for contamination of lead, for remediation of it. The EPA has given out grants to people like me to go to get qualified to remove this lead. And it was a big hype of all these jobs and how good it would do to companies, the area. And the only people that really made anything are the instructors and the local junior college. And when people in Novo, a cleanup company, come here, they say they're not going to pay people down here what they pay people other places in the United States. So who's looking over the EPA with these grants, and why is there all this hype that was going to stimulate the economy when this has been going on for 4 months now? There's rotation after rotation of people trained, and there are no jobs.
All right. David, thank you very much for that information. And obviously, I'm not familiar with the circumstance in Missouri, but we will take a look at what EPA is paying. One of the great debates that takes place in Congress is what kinds of wages the federal government, when people get contracts from federal government, grants from federal government, they should be required to pay. That often falls under the rubric of what we call Davis-Bacon, where we're saying that if the federal government is putting money into a project, we want to make sure that people get at least comparable wages. We don't want to see the federal government putting money into projects where contractors are paying low wages. So that is an issue that we should be looking at, and that is what we, in fact, will do, David.
Hawkeye in Placitas, New Mexico. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Thank you for taking my call. Senator Sanders, I just wanted to ask you what your position is on the, now that it's signed, the NDAA, which constitutes a loss of rights for jurisprudence.
Hawkeye voted against that bill.
Yeah, I know you did, and I do appreciate that.
I voted against it for two reasons. One is the reason that you and many people are talking about, this concern about indefinite incarceration and taking away legal rights from American citizens. That's a very bad precedent. The second reason, which has not gotten the kind of discussion that I think it needs, is the size of the authorization for the Defense Department. If we are serious about dealing with deficit reduction in a way that is sensible, in a way that does not call for the cutting back of Social Security benefits, Medicare, Medicaid, education, environmental protection, I think we have to take a hard look at defense spending. The war in Iraq is over. There should be a peace dividend, and I'm not sure that there is. So the two reasons I voted against it were this issue of indefinite incarceration, as well as the size of the budget.
Lowell in Salem. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hey, Senator. It's great to talk with you. I have an issue that just came up with my 401k plan. They froze my account when I moved to a cash position because they said it was excessive trading. And I was wondering if, with the elimination of pensions, if we can get the rules changed such that portfolio fund managers can't just freeze your account when they decide that you're being too safe.
Lowell, I think that's a good point. We have heard, and you're quite right, with the cutbacks in defined benefit pensions all across this country, with people losing a lot of their retirement dreams as a result of the stock market crash people are asking for more flexibility, and I think that is something that we should take a hard look at.
Rick in Port Townsend, Washington. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes, Senator Sanders, I'm a retired postal worker. I was a letter carrier for 26 years and just retired. And I would like to say that with you on our side, it's a hopeful note. But I would like to know whether anybody is going to look into the ineptness of postal managers from the Postmaster General all the way down to local managers. In 26 years, I've seen a huge amount of waste, unnecessary book work, unnecessary paperwork, unnecessary micromanagement of people that I did my job for 26 years, and I had my postmaster and supervisor telling me how to do my job. And I think that if you look into the wastefulness of some of the programs that they've instituted, there could be a huge savings there. The real deal behind what the Postmaster General and his people are doing is to harm the union. If they fire 100,000 people, they're all union workers, no managers.
Rick, we have just 30 seconds for Bernie to respond, if that's okay.
Well, we can pick it up after the break as well. Rick, interestingly enough, I just met last week with some letter carriers from Burlington, Vermont, who said exactly the same thing that you said. What happens is we need postmasters and supervisors to figure out how to be more entrepreneurial. We need these guys to get out of their offices to talk to the business community and say, all right, how do we work with you so that you utilize the post office more than you are right now? How can what we do be more beneficial to you? So what we need to do is to see a postal service which is more aggressive in selling their very, very good and affordable products out there rather than sitting around doing a lot of bureaucratic work.
Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour here on the Thom Hartmann program, 45 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls for Senator Sanders in just a moment. Check out Bernie's website, by the way, at sanders.senate.gov.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann program. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And, of course, you can participate in our message boards in our live chat room, which is open 24/7, 365 over at thomhartmann.com. And welcome back. Jackie in Napa, California, watching us on Free Speech TV. Jackie, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Senator. I'm calling about what Janet called about. I'm just thinking that the Republicans, as much as they're trying to disenfranchise all of us poor and minority people, they're killing us off first. I've been trying to get help with my medicine. My husband's been unemployed for 2 years. I've been sick for more than 2 years. And I can't get my medicine here. I can't even get any help. I can't even get a call back from the Medicare offices. Now, for me to and I just finding out from Jan. Anyways, they're killing us off. We're dying down here without our medicine. We don't expect health care anymore because there isn't any. But they do find a medicine that helps us. We can't get it. We can't afford it. And, you're not going to have a whole lot of base left by the time the elections are showing up. What can we do about that, Senator?
What we can do, Jackie, is a number of things. First of all, we can start off with the acknowledgement that for whatever reason, and I think we know the reasons, we in the United States are paying the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Number two, what we can also do is fight for what many of us have been fighting for years against enormous opposition from the drug companies, and that is the concept of reimportation. In other words, if you know that a product that you are taking for diabetes or cancer or AIDS, whatever it may be, is being sold in Canada or in Germany, the same exact product, why can't you purchase in a globalized economy where you have businesses running all over the world? Why can't an American citizen get an FDA-approved medicine from Germany, from Canada, at half the price and get it into his or her home? Can we do it? Of course we can do it. The prescription drug, the pharmaceutical industry, drug companies have been fighting us very, very significantly on that issue for a number of years. Thirdly, of course, we want, in terms of Medicare Part D, is to have the Medicare be able to negotiate prices with the drug companies, get lower prices, which will be of great benefit to prescription drug consumers and elderly people all over this country. So, and another area in terms of the high cost of prescription drugs, pharmaceutical industry wants to protect their patents for as long as they possibly can, prevent those drugs from becoming generics where the price will be a fraction of what they are under a brand name. They play games with that as well. So those are some of the areas that some of us are trying to aggressively go forward on. Needless to say, the drug companies and their supporters in Congress are fighting us every step of the way.
Are they one of the most powerful lobbies in Washington, D.C.?
They are, in terms of size, they're not Wall Street. They may not be the military-industrial complex. But they have a group called PhRMA, which represents the drug companies, who are incredibly sophisticated. They never lose. I cannot recall a battle in which, many of us in Congress are saying, what is going on? Why do we have to pay such outrageously high prices compared to Canada, other countries? And we have not been successful. That's the simple truth. They are a very powerful and effective lobby.
Remarkable. Senator Bernie Sanders with us here on the Thom Hartmann program. Our Brunch with Bernie Hour will be back with more of your calls for Senator Sanders right after this. It's just about 10 minutes before the hour. Welcome back to the place where despair is not an option. The Thom Hartmann program, our Brunch with Bernie hour right now. Senator Bernie Sanders, our national town hall meeting, and Derek in Iuka, Mississippi. Am I saying that right, Derek?
That's correct.
Okay, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Thank you. Good to speak with you. My question is this. It's a two-part question, really, but I was interested in knowing if Senator Sanders knew how many acres were owned in this country by the federal government, and if Senator Sanders would be in favor of the federal government land. In fact, the vast majority of it that's currently being used by entities such as the Tennessee Valley Authority or even some military bases, I understood, are actually on the oceanfront property.
Did you say selling off the land? Yeah.
Yeah, well, why would the federal government need all that land? And just for the sake of argument, I'm not talking about Yellowstone and national parks. I'm talking about land that clearly the federal government does not need, and wouldn't that be better in the hands of private entities or private individuals?
Okay.
Wouldn't the land then go to the highest and best use?
Thank you, Derek.
Well, thank you for the question. The answer is I don't know, but it is an enormous amount of land. In the Southwest and the West, the federal government owns a huge amount of land. Should we look at those parcels of land, those areas of land, where it might be beneficial for the private sector to own? Absolutely. On the other hand, where you have environmentally sensitive areas, where you have national park areas, where you have minerals that the federal government can make money from in terms of exploration, no, the federal government should hang on to that. I will give you one example where federal government land can be used in a very, very positive way. The Secretary of Interior, and that's the agency that runs much of the public federal land, indicates that on federal land alone in the Southwest, where there's very good solar exposure, if you had solar thermal plants on federal land alone, those plants could supply about 29% of the electricity used in American homes today. So those are opportunities that we have to look at as well. But are there areas where federal land might be sold to the private sector at a mutually beneficial way, where the federal government makes money, where the local economy is stimulated? I suspect there are, and that should be looked at. Jeff in Los Angeles, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes, Bernie.
Yeah.
There's so many different things I want to ask you, but I can only limit it to one. And the one, I guess, would be, I know in 1913, Woodrow Wilson was approached by a bunch of banksters, as Mr. Hartman would say, which I agree with. And the deal was, we'll finance your campaign as long as you do some things for us. And one of which was to turn over the Federal Reserve Bank, which he did, and he regretted it later. And in 1963, John F. Kennedy signed Executive Order 11114, which called for the Federal Reserve bankers to no longer make a profit from printing or providing money back to the American people at it.
Jeff, is there a question in there?
Okay, my question is, why is it important for us to take back the Federal Reserve Bank?
Well, excuse me. Jeff, you're asking an interesting question. As somebody who introduced and passed the most significant audit of the Fed that we have ever had, so that we could look at what happened during the Wall Street crash of a few years ago, this is an issue that I am very interested on. What I'm doing right now is working with a number of progressive economists to bring about real Federal Reserve reform, both structurally and in terms of what the Fed should be doing to protect working families in this country. In my view, the Fed is an agency, you could argue that it is the most important agency of the federal government. When during the Wall Street collapse of a few years ago, they lent out $16 trillion, $16 trillion, more than the GDP of the United States of America, to every financial institution, major financial institution in this country, central banks all over the world. This is an institution of enormous power. They operate while Bernanke has tried to make it a little bit more transparent, they are operating with a great deal of secrecy. Their regional federal banks are controlled by the banks themselves. So the time is long overdue to take a very hard look at the Fed, bring about structural reform, bring about a lot more transparency, and most importantly, see how we can make this agency work for the needs of the middle class and working families of our country, for small business, and not just for the large financial institutions. So the question that you've asked is an important one.
Frank in Bailey, Colorado. You're on with Senator Sanders.
Hello, Bernie. This is Frank.
Hey, Frank.
How you doing? Yes, I'm curious. Why are they not bringing the tariffs back to goods that come into our country? Because we cannot, sustainably compete with slave labor in China and other countries.
Well, Frank, this is an issue that Tom and I have talked about many, many times. When we talk about the collapse of the middle class in this country, when we talk about wages going down, when you talk about an increase in poverty to a significant degree, you're talking about the loss of millions and millions of good-paying manufacturing jobs. Corporate America, with their friends in Congress, fought for NAFTA. They fought for permanent normal trade relations with China. They fought for other trade agreements. And while they have always told us the function of these trade agreements, the goal of these agreements, is to create jobs in America, very few people believe that. What we understand to be true and what has happened is that as a result of these trade agreements, companies are shut down in this country, gone to countries where they can pay 50, 60 cents an hour. They produce their products there. They bring them back to America. So not only do we have a huge trade deficit, not only have we lost millions of jobs, the other thing that's happened, as we're seeing now, is that wages in the United States are being forced down. So the companies are saying, well, yeah, we're prepared to come back from China, but you know what? You're going to have to lower wages in the automobile industry, or low wages in electronics, in appliance manufacturing, 20, 30, 40%. So I agree with you. We need to develop an entirely new trade policy, the goal of which is to have corporate America reinvest in this country, create decent-paying jobs here.
Amen. Brother. Bernie, thanks so much for being with us.
Good to be with you, though.
And check out sanders.senate.gov for Bernie's website.